In the first year after the apocalypse, I died. My best friend and my brother pushed me out of the car, driving away with the supplies I had painstakingly gathered, leaving me alone to be devoured by zombies, buying themselves time to escape. In the last moments before I lost consciousness, I saw the man I once hated most, charging towards me with a military knife. He frantically swung his knife trying to rescue me from the jaws of the zombies, oblivious to his own injuries. Idiot. I murmured softly as I watched a zombie tear into his arm. No, it seemed we were destined to become a zombie couple. It turned out he loved me deeply, and that had never changed. If given another chance, I would never part from him again. Ding dong, what's that noise? So annoying. I groped around for my phone and turned off the alarm. Peace at last. I could sleep well again. A phone. My eyes snapped open, sensing something was wrong. 10 days after the apocalypse, the internet and power were cut off. My phone had become a useless brick, which I had discarded long ago. Where did this phone come from? I looked around at the tidy and clean room, the quilt in my arm still smelling of sunshine, and our wedding photo with Daniel on the dresser opposite the bed. Isn't this the bedroom of our new home? How did I end up back here? Shivering, I turned on the phone and checked the date, May 29th, 2023, my birthday. It was also our first wedding anniversary with Daniel and, in my past life, the day we divorced. At this moment, there were 7 days left until the apocalypse. Tears streamed down my face. Heaven had given me a second chance. Daniel, what about Daniel? Had he been reborn as well? Remembering how Daniel had fearlessly plunged into a horde of zombies for me in my past life, I began to cry again. Where was this man who loved me so dearly now? Right, I should call him. I picked up the phone to call Daniel, but then noticed the continuous stream of messages popping up on WeChat. I clicked to view them, and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. The messages were all from the couple who betrayed me in my past life. My so-called best friend Eleanor had messaged me on WeChat. Violet, did Daniel agree to the divorce? Don't be soft-hearted. A cheater does it either 0 times or countless times. He really is the worst, even daring to make a move on me. If I hadn't resisted with all my might, I would have betrayed you. Violet, such a scumbag should never be forgiven. Violet. Where are you? Should I come over and accompany you to talk to him? Eleanor was my best friend from high school and the main reason behind my divorce with Daniel. I was from a blended family, and my stepmom treated me poorly. After my brother was born, my dad became even more indifferent towards me. Such a family environment made me very introverted, and in high school, Eleanor was my only friend, whom I considered a close sister, though not by blood. Her parents were also divorced, but she lived with her mom, who was more attentive, so her life was somewhat better than mine. Our similar family backgrounds brought us much closer, and I shared everything with her, including the confession from Daniel, the most handsome guy at our university. Later, I discovered that she had been seething with jealousy from the moment Daniel confessed to me. She couldn't stand how someone as plain as me could be so lucky to win the affection of someone like Daniel. Growing up unloved and uncared for, like a blade of grass, how could I ever live a better life than hers? After we got married, she fabricated a story about Daniel trying to assault her while drunk, pushing me towards divorce. I stared at Eleanor's name on WeChat, wishing I could leap through the screen and end the wretched woman. If it hadn't been for her, why would I have parted ways with Daniel in my past life? I still remember Eleanor's chilling smile in the last moment they pushed me out of the car. The venomous words she spat shattered my soul. Do you know that Daniel never betrayed you? He never even cared to touch me. I lied to you all along, yet you didn't believe him. Maybe you never had any confidence in yourself. Fool. Yes, I've always lacked confidence. I've been a fool, deep down. I could never believe that someone like Daniel could love someone like me. I'm just an ordinary person. How could the wonderful Daniel love only me? So, when Eleanor claimed that Daniel had changed his heart, I subconsciously chose not to trust him. Perhaps I just didn't deserve it. Being a child from a broken home, it's really hard to be mentally healthy. I'm insecure and sensitive, always feeling that someone as bright and handsome as Daniel deserved better. But now, I am confident Daniel would sacrifice his life for me. What else is there to doubt, Daniel, in this lifetime? It's my turn to protect you. I opened the WeChat window of my half-brother Christopher, and sure enough, it was the same issue. Sis, has he agreed yet? If he doesn't, I'll make a scene at his company. Shameless dog. He cheats, but won't divorce. Sis, you must strip him of everything in the divorce. He's the one at fault. The new house and the car should be yours. Don't go soft. And the savings, they're yours too. Tell me where you are. I'll come to you, and we can confront him together, sis. Don't let that scoundrel trick you. Where are you? I'll come and support you, huh? Reading the messages on my phone, I scoffed. It was just like the last time Eleanor and Christopher schemed to stay close to me, urging me to divorce Daniel and strip him of everything. I thought they cared about me, but they were actually after my money. I later discovered that these scoundrels had been in cahoots all along. They had a perfect plan: to have me divorce Daniel and take over my house for themselves. After all, our house in Shanghai is worth millions. Christopher could never dream of buying such a house with his family still crammed in a tiny 40-square-meter flat. Not with my father's modest salary and Christopher's lack of ambition. They could never afford a new home. Want my house? It's not impossible. Maybe I could help them realize their dream sooner. A cold smile formed on my lips as I closed the WeChat app and dialed Daniel's number. I called twice, but no one answered. Suddenly, I remembered that Daniel has been avoiding my calls, fearing that I might bring up divorce. In my past life, today was the day we managed to get a divorce certificate, all because Christopher found Daniel hiding in his office. With no escape, Daniel reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Thinking of Daniel's fragile, wounded look when we divorced still wrenches my heart. I'm sorry, Daniel, I will never hurt you again. I jumped out of bed and initiated a WeChat conversation with Daniel. I composed a lengthy message, telling Daniel that I was wrong. I didn't want a divorce anymore. I wouldn't cause any more trouble. I knew he was innocent, and that I loved him. Halfway through typing the message, before I could send it, Daniel's call suddenly came through. I hurriedly answered the phone, and hearing his familiar voice once again made my eyes redden and tears well up before I could even let them fall. However, the words he spoke took me by surprise. Daniel's tone was melancholic and profound. Violet, can we please stop fighting? You might not believe what I'm about to say, but I need to tell you that the apocalypse is near. Violet, let's survive this together, okay? Daniel, I believe you. Please come back. Let's not part ways again. Before I knew it, I was crying all over again. Unexpectedly, Daniel had also been reborn. What a mercy from heaven. After briefly catching up over the phone, Daniel didn't dare to say too much. He confirmed that I was at home and said he would come to see me. Then he hung up. I held the disconnected phone, calmed my emotions, and while feeling relieved, I urgently pondered our next steps. There were only 7 days left until the apocalypse, and we truly didn't have much time in the apocalypse. Supplies are critical. In my past life, the majority of people were killed by zombies while out searching for supplies, including myself. With this in mind, I quickly opened the bank app to check the balance of our savings, 800,000. That was all the savings Daniel and I had. Daniel's family used to be quite wealthy, but after his parents died in a car accident, almost all of their assets were seized by his greedy uncle's family. Except for this house, there was so much to buy, and 800,000 was far too little. I opened various apps and managed to secure some loans on platforms like JD, Taba, and others. Before long, after deducting the transaction fees, the borrowed 600,000 was also in the account. Now we had 400,000. Yes, I had succeeded in the first step. Later, when Daniel came back, I'd have him do the same. Just then, a news alert popped up on my phone. It reported an incident of rabies near a market in Wuhan City. However, the police quickly arrived at the scene and controlled the situation, urging citizens not to panic. I clicked on the accompanying image and zoomed in. Although the picture was blurry, I could clearly see the person, who was pixelated and marked as a rabies patient, covered with dark purple veins. A chill ran through me. I knew this wasn't rabies but a precursor to zombie mutation, and this was just the beginning. It happened like this in my past life too. Initially, there were a few isolated rabies incidents, which escalated to massive human-to-human transmission, followed by the complete paralysis of cities. The apocalypse had arrived. I knew we needed to stock up on supplies quickly, as it would become increasingly unsafe to go out. Turning off the phone, I stood up, grabbed a carton of milk and some bread from the fridge, and began to eat my breakfast. People need food as much as iron needs steel. Missing a meal could make one terribly hungry, and I had starved for a long time in my past life. Soon, the creamy taste of the milk and the sweetness of the bread filled my mouth, a delightful flavor that almost brought tears of joy. It tasted so good and fresh. In my past life, to survive, I had often eaten expired bread and even grass roots from the roadside. I then took an egg from the fridge. I made myself a fried egg. After filling myself up, I settled into the cozy sofa and started scrolling through the notes on my phone, planning my shopping list while waiting for Daniel to return. First on the list was food: 100 bags of 20 kilograms rice, 100 bags of 20 kilograms flour, 50 bags of 20 kilograms soybeans. Soybeans aren't just for making soy milk and tofu, they can also be sprouted into bean sprouts, which serve as vegetables that provide essential vitamins. Next, I noted down cooking oil and canned preserved meat and sausages, which are easy to store. As I was engrossed in my planning, I heard the click of the door lock. I immediately stood up, staring at the door, knowing Daniel had come home. The moment I saw Daniel's handsome face, I was reminded of how he had braved a horde of zombies alone to save me. The zombies had bitten his arm and torn his leg, but he seemed unaware of the damage. Daniel, I rushed into his arms and held him tightly, and he hugged me back with equal fervor. Violet, thank God, we're finally together again. Daniel's embrace was dry and warm, making it hard for me to let go. However, we had no time for anything else. After restraining ourselves and separating, Daniel and I did a quick review and unanimously decided to first secure funds to buy supplies and then simply survive in this apocalyptic world. Of course, we didn't mind settling scores with those who wronged us in our past lives. I picked up my phone and showed Daniel how to apply for a loan after teaching him once. The clever Daniel managed the rest on his own. I continued to update our shopping list in the Notes app. While waiting for the loan to process, Daniel leaned over to look at my list and then said, Violet, this neighborhood has a high occupancy rate. Once the zombie virus breaks out, it will turn into a hell on earth. We need to find another place to live. I nodded, sharing the same thought. In my previous life, I had lived here during the outbreak and had seen firsthand the hell it could become. Daniel, how about we move to the outskirts or the countryside? Those areas have fewer people, making them relatively safer after a zombie outbreak. Moreover, the countryside offers land for growing vegetables and grains, ensuring basic sustenance. Daniel said, that's a good idea, but it's not realistic to find a desirable house in the countryside on short notice. Let's rent a villa in the suburbs. Violet, my eyes lit up. That was a great idea, finding a standalone villa to live in. Buying a villa was unrealistic given our means, but renting was much simpler. Without further ado, we both started browsing a rental app. The app listed about 30 villas for rent, with prices fluctuating between $25,000 and $50,000 per month. After browsing for a while, I picked up 3 favorites to discuss with Daniel. Just then, he grabbed his phone and pointed to one on the app. Violet, let's rent this one. It turned out to be one of the 3 I had selected, the Lawn U Garden Villa. Located on a sparsely populated hillside, the villa's security measures were described as excellent in the listing, with walls as high as 5 meters. However, my hesitation in making it my top choice was due to one detail. It supposedly lacked a basement. Lacking a basement could be a major issue for storing supplies. I frowned slightly. I really like this place too. The security is well done, and we wouldn't have to spend much time or effort on modifications. But how could such a great villa lack a basement? Daniel smiled enigmatically. Violet, the basement here is more than adequate. Trust me, let's rent it. Of course, I trusted Daniel, and we decided right then to rent that villa. Daniel made a call to the real estate agent to arrange an immediate viewing and signing of the contract for a house. By this time, Daniel's loan had also been approved. As a high executive in his company, Daniel has a strong reputation and a good job, which allowed him to secure a significantly larger loan amount than me. After deducting the fees, we had $900,000, bringing our account balance to $3 million. An hour later, we drove to the villa, bringing with us the first batch of supplies we had picked up along the way at the supermarket. The villa was located in a high-end residential area, luxuriously decorated with a large footprint, and the monthly rent was $40,000. We didn't negotiate the price and signed the rental contract for a total of $160,000 with a deposit and 3 months of rent paid up front. The young real estate agent was beaming with joy, surprised at how smoothly the deal went without even a price negotiation. Truly an encounter with generous clients, the agent said with a smile. Please take good care of the keys, and here's your contract, sir. If there's anything you need in the future, feel free to call me. Daniel took the keys and said, no need for later, there's something now. We have a 130 square meter apartment in the city center that we urgently need to sell for some cash. Could you help us handle that? Thrilled to have more business, the agent happily agreed. No problem, just give me the details like the exact location and apartment number, and I will definitely help you sell it quickly. After Daniel provided the details of the district and the apartment, the agent mentioned that a property of this size in that area would normally sell for at least $13 million. Daniel and I looked at each other and explained, both of us run a company, and we've encountered some financial troubles recently, needing quick cash. As long as someone is willing to buy, we're not asking for $13 million anymore. We'll sell it for $8 million, but it has to be cash. We won't accept bank financing. Such steep discounts were not new to our experienced agent, who had seen many business owners needing quick cash recovery. He expressed a deep understanding of our situation and assured us that he would definitely help us sell quickly. Deals like this usually close fast. Once the agent left, we closed the door and thoroughly examined the villa. The walls, as described in the rental app, were indeed 5 meters high, giving a strong sense of security. Still, I plan to install an additional layer of protective electric netting over the walls. In a post-apocalyptic world, the danger comes not just from zombies but also from humans. The villa's landscaping was well maintained, with a large pomegranate tree, an apple tree, an osmanthus tree, an orange tree, and 2 other trees I didn't recognize but could tell were well cared for. There was also a large pond in the yard with several bright koi. The garden was planted with a variety of flowers, with clusters of colorful hydrangeas blooming most beautifully, making it a delightful sight. Seeing such a beautiful garden lifted my spirits, yet my thoughts were not on romantic aesthetics, but on buying hundreds of bags of vegetable seeds to fill the garden with vegetables. The fertile soil here would surely produce delicious bok choy. The villa had 3 stories, and I noticed that the roof was covered with solar panels. With these, we wouldn't have to worry about electricity in a post-apocalyptic world. That was one of the reasons why I was drawn to this villa in the first place. I realized Daniel was no longer by my side, and when I followed him, I discovered the villa's backyard. For some reason, the agent had not posted pictures of the backyard online. The backyard was an absolute surprise. The first thing that caught my eye was a transparent glass greenhouse, although most of the plants inside were dead, leaving only some dry soil and pots, which didn't look very appealing, perhaps because it wasn't photogenic. The agent hadn't posted it online, but to me, this greenhouse was a treasure trove. This is a ready-made vegetable greenhouse. I'll have fresh vegetables even in winter. Additionally, there's a well right outside the greenhouse, perfectly solving our post-apocalyptic drinking water issues. This place is literally the house of my dreams. At that moment, Daniel waved at me. Violet, come over here. I hurried over and saw Daniel pulling on a hanging orchid in the corner of the greenhouse. This orchid was so ordinary that I wouldn't have noticed it if Daniel hadn't pointed it out. Then, a miracle happened when Daniel tugged at it. The floor of the greenhouse suddenly shifted, revealing a dark gap. Daniel turned on his phone's flashlight and extended his hand to me. Come on, let me show you the basement. Was the basement here all along? This is just too exciting. I grabbed Daniel's hand, and we went down a wooden staircase into the dark basement. Once we reached the flat ground, Daniel flipped the light switch on the wall. The moment the lights came on, I almost screamed in surprise. The place was beautifully arranged. The previous owner had set up the basement living room as a lounge area, complete with a huge screen for watching TV and movies. Facing it was a set of luxurious leather sofas, clearly very expensive, showing a taste for the finer things in life. Besides these, there was a large fridge and a freezer in the living room. Unfortunately, apart from a few bottles of cola whose expiration date was unknown, there was nothing else inside. No worries, I thought, I'll fill it up. The basement comprised 4 rooms and the living room, including a kitchen and 2 bathrooms. Apart from the living room, the kitchen was well furnished, but the other rooms, except for the master and second bedrooms, which each had a bed and a wardrobe, were empty. That was actually great. It meant there was plenty of space to store supplies. Seeing my uncontrollable joy, Daniel smiled and said, "There's more to see. Do you want to?" I nodded eagerly. "Yes, show me." He led me to the second bedroom and pressed an eye on a portrait on the wall, revealing a secret door. Daniel went in first and turned on the lights. That's when I realized there was another staircase leading downward. At the end of the stairs was the second floor of the basement. The layout was identical to the first basement floor, with 4 rooms, a living room, a kitchen, and 2 bathrooms. However, the decoration here was completely different from upstairs. It seemed the original owner had intended to store something here, as there were many shelves, but they hadn't managed to store anything yet. These empty shelves were perfect for us to store our supplies, but the surprises of the second basement level didn't end there. In a small room, I found a complete set of power generation equipment, and another small room housed a ventilation system. No wonder there was no odd smell in the basement. Another bathroom had been converted into a waste and sewage treatment room. I took a deep breath. My worries about the impending apocalypse halved, with such a fortress. The future for Daniel and me would be much easier. As long as we have enough supplies, we could survive here for over a decade. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Violet, do you like it here?" "I love it. With this, we won't have to hide and run like in our past lives." "But Daniel, how did you know about this basement?" "Violet, didn't you notice the landlord's surname?" "The same surname. Could it be?" I soon realized why Daniel was so familiar with this place. Because he was the previous owner of this villa, he and his father had designed and built this place when he was 17. Every little detail here was a secret between father and son. Daniel has been a fan of disaster movies since he was a child, and he dreamed of building a highly secure fortress. His father, who adored him, was willing to let him do it his way. This fortress was meant to be his father's gift for his 18th birthday, unfortunately, just after the villa was renovated. A month before his 18th birthday, Daniel's parents died in a car accident. Moreover, most of the family's estate, including the villa, was seized by his greedy uncle. Unexpectedly, his uncle, not realizing the villa's true value, rented it out. Daniel, while browsing rental apps, stumbled upon it. After a series of twists and turns, the villa ended up back in our hands, almost as if by fate. We finally received Daniel's father's gift. How wonderful, Daniel. Let's get someone to change the locks. Yes, not just the locks, we should also install an electric fence. We went upstairs to look for locksmiths and electricians who could install electric fences on a local services app. The villa had 3 floors, each with high ceilings. The top floor offered a wonderful view over the walls outside. The house was fully furnished, with a freezer and a double-door fridge in the kitchen. The second and third floors each had a fridge too. But these weren't enough, and I planned to get more. The villa's doors and windows were bullet and explosion-proof, very solid. I checked the curtains and ordered a batch of blackout curtains from an online retailer to ensure our use of electric lights inside wouldn't be visible from outside, even to zombies. I opted for same-day delivery with installation included. I also bought some small items to be delivered. These included 2 infrared telescopes, 5 Nintendo Switch consoles, a box of various game cartridges, and 2 fitness rings. I also purchased an outdoor tent, 5 outdoor flashlights, 2 oil pumps, and some food and drinks. These items weren't numerous enough to arouse the delivery person's suspicion. After some thought, I ordered 2 large freezers with same-day delivery. In such a large villa, buying a few freezers wouldn't attract attention. Soon, the locksmith and electrician arrived. Daniel, an engineering whiz with excellent practical skills, had just finished setting up the surveillance equipment by himself. Seeing the workman arrive, he went over to chat and offer his help. After watching the locksmith change the locks and paying him, Daniel inquired about even more advanced security doors. The locksmith mentioned that there was indeed a type that could withstand ordinary bombs, made of the same material as the explosion-proof doors used in bank vaults. Daniel immediately decided to purchase one for the villa's main entrance. You want to install double doors? That's not difficult, but this kind of door usually takes a month to order. A month was too long to wait. Daniel, after learning that the door cost 100,000 yuan, offered 200,000 yuan if the locksmith could deliver it within 3 days. With the double price, even the impossible became possible, boosted by the promise of extra money. The locksmith agreed to deliver the door in 3 days and left happily after receiving the deposit. Then Daniel went to find the electrician. Installing an electric fence on such a high wall wasn't easy, but fortunately, 4 electricians arrived, making the work more efficient with their numbers. Daniel watched as the workers were nearly done and then decided to add an extra task for them on the spot. It was to install an additional layer of electric fencing around the villa. The electrician looked at him oddly and asked, "Why do you young folks need so much electric fencing around your house? This villa complex is one of the top in the area. Isn't the security here good enough?" Daniel chuckled and said, "My partner is a bit timid and suffers from mild paranoia. Having better security at home helps her feel safe, and that puts my mind at ease as well." Hearing this, I glared at Daniel, who winked at me and gave a mischievous smile. I couldn't help but laugh at Daniel's adorable antics. Well, if it's paranoia, so be it. After all, when the apocalypse comes, it's very likely that I won't have any interaction with these people anymore. This thought made my heart feel a bit melancholic. Haha, got it. I didn't realize you two had such a great relationship. After I finish this job, I should go back and see my wife and kids too. The worker laughed heartily. Hearing that, I quickly said, "Yes, with the pandemic being so severe, who knows when it might flare up again. It's best for all of you to go back after finishing this job, stock up on food. Stay home, and being together with your family is better than anything. Isn't that the truth? There's not much money to be made in these pandemic times. I'll be going back this weekend." "Me too. I'll leave once you guys do." Hearing this, Daniel and I moved a bit closer, feeling somewhat comforted. Although we had been reborn, our power was still too limited. We were just ordinary people who could only take care of ourselves. Forgive us for only being able to hint subtly at the danger There's really nothing more we can do. The person to install the curtains would also be arriving soon. It was already 1 p.m. I checked my phone and discussed with Daniel that he would stay home to supervise the work and receive deliveries. I would go out first to rent a storage space to facilitate our transfers and then shop at the supermarket. Daniel knew how precious time was and handed me the car keys to go first. As I was about to leave, my phone suddenly rang. Christopher's name appeared on the screen, Daniel, and I exchanged glances, and I answered the call, putting it on speakerphone. Sis, where are you? I went to your house and knocked, but you weren't there. I went to find Daniel at his company, and he seems to have disappeared too. What's the situation between you two? I sighed deliberately and said, Christopher, Daniel has agreed to a divorce. Really? That's great news, sis. Congratulations on getting rid of that jerk. His voice brimming with uncontrollable joy, but he won't agree to leave with nothing. What? That jerk Daniel, that scoundrel, he was the one who betrayed you first. Why shouldn't he leave with nothing? Sis, you didn't agree to that, did you? Christopher's tone was worried. Filled with probing, I replied in a low tone, Christopher, I'm tired, I just want to leave. If he won't leave with nothing, then so be it. As long as I can be away from him, I don't want anything else. Right now, I just want to live quietly with Lucky. I'm really tired. What? Sis, you mustn't be muddled. How can you not fight for your rights? Please, don't be confused now. Where are you? I'll come to you right away. No need to come find me. I've made up my mind. Money and possessions are external things. I want nothing now. I'm about to sign the divorce papers with him. No, you absolutely must not sign, sister. Christopher on the other side was deeply distressed, as if he were the one facing ruin. All right, I'm busy now. Christopher, I'm hanging up. With her objective achieved, the call abruptly ended. I silently counted to 10 in my head, and the phone rang again. This time, the name flashing on the screen was Eleanor. Those two seemed to share information incredibly fast. They might even be together right now. I let the phone ring twice, before casually picking it up and turning on the speaker. Violet, what's going on with you? You weren't saying this yesterday. Why suddenly decide to leave with nothing today? You're not the one who made the mistake. How can you leave with nothing? Are you confused? Eleanor's voice from the other end was earnest, seemingly thoughtful. If it were the old days, I would have believed her without hesitation, but now, all I wanted was to tear her apart. Suppressing the nausea inside, I paused for 2 seconds and then said, Eleanor, I can't stand it anymore. I don't want to see Daniel. I can't bear to be with him for another minute. I just want a divorce, even if it means leaving with nothing. So you really want to leave with nothing? Would you let that scumbag off the hook after sleeping with you for over half a year? Is Daniel really that shameless? Can you believe what she's saying? I clenched my fists, holding back the rising anger, and said, actually, Daniel is willing to leave the house to me. I didn't tell Christopher just now, but Daniel has a debt of $2.5 million and said he'd transfer the house to me if I clear his debt with $2.5 million. But where can I find $2.5 million, although I know our house is worth at least $10 million? Money is just an object. Without love, what's the point of money? Violet, you mustn't think that way. Money is really important. How can you be so foolish? Enough, Eleanor. You don't need to persuade me anymore. I can't raise $2.5 million. You don't know how my stepmother watches me like a hawk, and my father doesn't care about these things. I don't want to ask them. I don't even want the house anymore. After the divorce, let's just each go our own way. Once I've adjusted, I'll focus on my work. I can definitely support myself well. I'm not going to talk anymore, Eleanor. I'm going to sign the divorce papers with Daniel. Please don't sign. Violet, let me help you think of a way. I'll talk to Christopher right now. It's just $2.5 million. When we all put our heads together, we can definitely find a solution, but I don't want to bother you, or Christopher either. With his mother like that, he really can't make decisions, sister. What are you talking about? I'm your brother. How could it be a bother? Don't sign. It's just $2.5 million. We'll find a way for you. Christopher eagerly took over the phone, forgetting to hide the fact that he was with Eleanor, though they always acted like they weren't close in front of me. After a few seconds of silence, I responded with a choked and touched voice, Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Eleanor. But you guys need to hurry up. Daniel said he's only giving me 3 days to gather the money. If I can't manage it, he won't divorce me. Don't worry, sis. We'll definitely get you the $2.5 million. We won't let you lose out. You're my real sister after all. After hanging up the phone, I chuckled softly. These two fools, they've taken the bait. In the end, it's their greed that's to blame. They think they can trade $2.5 million for my big house. I'll wait until the very last moment, as doomsday approaches, to reveal the truth to them. Their expressions will surely be priceless. Daniel gently tapped my nose. You sly fox. This is getting more interesting by the minute. I'm really looking forward to what comes next. I smiled and said, I'm looking forward to the 5 million hitting my account too. It'll buy a lot of food, drinks, and other necessities, and it will serve to infuriate that heartless family. Daniel, I'm heading out. All right, be careful on the road. I first rented a warehouse for 10,000 yuan. Then I went to buy a large white truck, which cost me 380,000 yuan, and I paid an extra 1,000 yuan to have it fully fueled and parked next to the warehouse. Once all that was settled, I drove our SUV to the market to shop. Actually, I wanted to drive the big truck myself to load it up easily without having to carry everything, but since I only have a C-class license, I couldn't legally drive such a vehicle on the road without risking a run-in with the traffic police. Fortunately, Daniel could do it. He has a broad range of interests and spent 4 years during university to obtain the difficult A-class license. That's also why I bought this truck. Instead of heading to a supermarket, I went to the city's comprehensive wholesale market because the prices are lower and buying in bulk there wouldn't raise suspicions. I first went to a wholesale vendor of grains and oils and told the owner, I need 100 bags of 20 kilograms rice, 100 bags of 20 kilograms flour, 50 bags of 20 kilograms soybeans, 20 bags of 5 kilograms low-gluten flour for baking, 20 bags of 1 kilogram corn kernels, 20 bags of 1 kilogram red beans, 100 bags of 1 kilogram green beans, 20 bags of 1 kilogram black beans, 20 bags of 1 kilogram kidney beans, and 20 bags of 1 kilogram sesame seeds, and bring me 100 cans of 5L rapeseed oil, 50 cans of 5L peanut oil, 50 cans of 5L soybean oil, 10 cans of 5L olive oil, and 10 cans of 5L corn oil. The owner's mouth fell open in disbelief. Miss, are you really buying all this? Seeing his disbelief, I smiled helplessly and said, yes, it's true. I'm planning to open my own supermarket and thought I'd stock up in advance. Oh, you're opening a supermarket, I see now. The owner finally understood and no longer doubted me. Taking the small notebook where he had jotted down everything I mentioned, he busily went to prepare the goods. I reminded him to make sure the quality was up to standard and to pick the freshest stock before paying. However, I didn't rush him to deliver the goods. Instead, I told him that our supermarket's own truck would come to pick them up later and asked him to have the items ready to load onto our truck when it arrived. I called Daniel to find out that the curtains had already been delivered and the installation was underway. I hadn't expected home installations in the same city to be so fast. I gave Daniel the address of the warehouse and where the truck was parked, telling him to drive the truck over once he was done. The truck keys were hidden in a fire hydrant near the warehouse door. Throughout the whole stockpiling process, stockpiling food is the most labor-intensive and time-consuming task, yet it's also the most crucial one. I asked Daniel to drive directly here, then park his car at the warehouse. We'll head to the villa at night when it's quieter, which helps me skip the step of loading and unloading in between. Otherwise, Daniel and I would have to move everything from the warehouse to the car later, which would be too time-consuming. After stocking up on grains and oils, my next stop is the spice shop. I bought 10 boxes of 500 milliliters soy sauce, each containing 12 bottles, and 20 boxes of 500 milliliters aged vinegar, also with 12 bottles per box. I can't help it, I just love cooking with vinegar. Following the same routine, I got 10 boxes of dark soy sauce and 20 boxes of cooking wine. I also stocked up on 20 boxes of Pichian bean paste and 10 boxes of yellow bean paste. I bought 20 bags of MSG, which I don't really like to eat. Then, I purchased 50 bags each of Sichuan pepper powder and black pepper powder. I got 100 bags of 25 kilograms salt because, in a post-apocalyptic world, even if other spices are gone, salt alone can make food tasty. Plus, not consuming salt can lead to health issues. This spice shop also sells various packaged spices, and I'm particularly interested in the ones for hot pot, soup broths, and boiled meat slices. I bought 200 bags each of my favorite hot pot seasonings from Quoto and Mingyang, and 200 bags of Dijuang's clear oil hot pot base, 200 bags each for Hidaleo's tomato and seafood hot pot bases. Additionally, I got 200 bags each of seasoning for boiled meat slices, soup broth, dry pot, braised sauce, pickled fish, spicy boiled fish, and spicy fish. I'm stocking up on fish seasonings because we have a fish pond at home, and I plan to replace the koi with grass carp and other easy-to-raise, tasty fish. I also bought 10 kilograms each of large spices like Sichuan peppercorns, bay leaves, dried chili, star anise, fennel, and cinnamon. I bought 2 large boxes of various sauces for mixing with rice. At this point, I'm not too concerned about health. I picked another large box of long shelf-life sauces. It's better to stock up on these items. As we'll need to enjoy our meals even in dire times, our truck at the grain and oil store is probably full now, so I had everything else delivered to the warehouse. After paying and leaving the address, I moved on to the next place, the dried goods store. It offers a variety of dried foods from across the regions, many of which are my favorites. Daniel just called to tell me that a buyer is willing to pay $8 million for our house, in cash, and the transaction can be completed tomorrow. The buyer, wary of any changes on our end, has already transferred a $500,000 deposit to Daniel. After their phone conversation, Daniel immediately transferred the money to me. Seeing the extra balance in my account, I felt more confident and dove back into enthusiastic shopping. Bring me 100 kilograms of dried wood ear mushrooms, 50 kilograms of dried cowpeas, 50 kilograms of dried radish, 10 kilograms of morel mushrooms, 50 kilograms of dried shiitake mushrooms, 10 kilograms of matsutake, 10 kilograms of dried scallops, 50 kilograms of kelp, 20 kilograms of rock seaweed, 10 kilograms of lilies, 20 kilograms of red dates, 10 kilograms of lion's mane mushrooms, 20 kilograms of white fungus. After settling the dried goods, I headed to the next store. This is a food store that sells a variety of semi-finished or finished food products. Seeing the Sichuan sausages on the shelf, I bought 100 kilograms. The owner mentioned they also have Guam-style sausages, which Daniel loves. So I bought another 100 kilograms, 200 kilograms of Sichuan cured meat, 20 kilograms of dried fish, a box of 24 pure meat luncheon meats. I bought 20 boxes total. Then, I grabbed 2 large boxes filled with all sorts of instant self-heating pots, self-heating meals, instant noodles, hot dry noodles, loasafen, rice noodles, and vacuum-packed noodle skins. If it weren't for the expiration dates on these items, I would have liked to stock up even more. They are just so convenient to prepare. While I was buying cured meat, Daniel drove up. The owner of the grain and oil wholesale store directed a few workers to load the goods into the car, then came over to find me. I told him about my purchases, and Daniel nodded in acknowledgement. Then we split up to order from different places. By this time, it was almost 7 p.m., and the bustling wholesale market from earlier had quieted down significantly. The owner of the food store told me that the shops in the wholesale market usually close at 7 p.m. There aren't many customers in the evening, so they close early. Fortunately, I was in luck. The owner of the daily necessities wholesale store hadn't closed yet, so I quickly bought a lot of daily essentials like paper towels, wet wipes, toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, laundry detergent, and sanitary pads. Just as I was finishing paying the owner of the daily necessities store, Daniel called me. "Violet, are you done yet?" "All done, Daniel. How about you?" Daniel chuckled lightly. "I'm almost done too. I'll send you my location, and you can drive our SUV over here to load some stuff." I drove the SUV parked near the grain and oil store over to him, and Daniel opened the trunk, mysteriously loading several large boxes inside. When I got out of the car to help him, I saw what he had me come to load. It was several boxes of various types of knives, including sharp kitchen knives, cleavers, as well as axes and saws. Among these tools, the one that caught my eye the most was a brand new military knife. In my past life, it was with such a military knife that Daniel had charged into a horde of zombies to save me. "Daniel, where did you buy all these from?" Daniel pointed to a hardware store not far away. "From there, the military knife too." Upon hearing this, Daniel's eyes suddenly deepened, and after a couple of seconds, he replied, "Yes, bought it there too." I looked in the direction of the hardware store and said, "Daniel, I don't think one military knife is enough. I want one too." Daniel looked deeply at me, then smiled and said, "All right, I'll go get another one." Yes, I want one too. In this life, I don't want to just let Daniel protect me, I want to protect him as well. By the time we had loaded all the goods from the grain and oil store, it was already 8 p.m. The wholesale market was located in the suburbs, and there wasn't much to eat around, so before we headed home, I ordered a large portion of crayfish, barbecue, and spicy hot pot for takeaway. The apocalypse is coming, and we can't neglect our stomachs. At 8:40 p.m., I drove the SUV and Daniel drove the truck back to the villa. Daniel had painted a moving company's logo on the truck. When we entered the residential area, the security guard glanced at it, assumed it was a resident moving in, and seeing me leading the way, he didn't ask any questions and just let Daniel through. The occupancy rate here is not high, and we didn't encounter anyone on our way back. Arriving at the villa, I saw several large boxes placed at the entrance. Knowing that the urgent order I had placed on JD.com that afternoon had also been delivered, same-day delivery is really too convenient. Opening the electric gate, I had just driven the SUV and truck home when the delivery guy called. Daniel got out of the car and, without even washing his hands, went to bring in the takeout and the packages that were left at the door. We had been busy all day and were starving by now, After closing the front door, we hurried to wash our hands and eat. Once we tasted the spicy and delicious hot pot, complemented by crayfish and spicy lamb skewers, and had eaten most of the delicious meal, we finally felt revived. Daniel, holding up his Coke, toasted, "Violet, here's to our rebirth." I clinked my Coke with his and gazed at him, saying, "Daniel, here's to being together forever." Daniel looked back at me tenderly. "Violet, to us being together forever. Yes, I hope we can be together forever, whether in a peaceful world or a desolate apocalypse. As long as we are together, it's all good." After dinner, we started unloading. Grains and cooking oils are the most important supplies in the apocalypse. But grains are not easy to store as they can get infested with bugs when it's hot. Therefore, we decided to store our grains and oils in the relatively cooler second basement level, where the temperature is about 6 or 7 degrees lower than above ground. However, moving all these items to the second basement level is certainly not an easy task. We are humans, not superheroes. Luckily, I had anticipated this issue and ordered 4 electric transporters and automatic unloading machines from JD.com in the afternoon. With these tools, our work became much easier. Still, many times we had to do the work ourselves. By 4 a.m., the two of us had finally unloaded all the goods, and we were both covered in flour from head to toe. We quickly showered in the bathroom, and it wasn't until 4:30 a.m. that we finally lay down in bed. We slept until 9:20 a.m. I was woken up by the ringing of my phone. I opened my bleary eyes and fumbled for my phone, only to see a name jumping on the screen: Eleanor. Christopher's mom, also my stepmother. Before I could answer, the ringing stopped. I then noticed there were already 7 missed calls from Eleanor on my screen. Daniel, awakened by the noise, wrapped his arm around my waist and leaned over to see what was happening. "That old witch must be getting impatient to snoop around," he said in a lazy, charming voice early in the morning, which made me snuggle further into his arms. I thought she would have called last night, but she held off until now. The phone rang again, and this time I answered it. "Hello, Violet, are you trying to kill me? Why aren't you answering my calls? Have you grown too bold? Are you trying to rebel? Do you know how many times I've called? I almost thought you were dead." The shrill and grating voice from the phone made me physically uncomfortable. This woman's voice and tone had been my nightmare since childhood. I suppressed my nausea, listening to her barrage of scolding, and reminded myself to just endure a little longer, just a bit more, and then I could strike back fatally. "Violet, what exactly did you and Daniel discuss? Your brother said you now need $250. 000. Eleanor finally got to the point after venting. The moment had come. I gathered my emotions and replied calmly, "Victoria, don't listen to Christopher's nonsense. I don't want any money. Please don't misunderstand, and tell him not to bother. I won't take a penny from him." "What do you mean?" Eleanor was confused by my response. "Victoria, sorry for the trouble. I can handle my own issues. I really don't need any money. It's hard for you guys to save money too. I'm sorry for making you worry. $250,000 is not a small amount. I really didn't want you to know about it. It's all Eleanor and Christopher's fault. How could they take it upon themselves to tell you? I shouldn't have told them about it either. Victoria, it's all my fault. If there's nothing else, I'm going to hang up." Hey, don't hang up. How can you just say you don't want it? You always change your mind so quickly. It's just $2 million, right? Let's figure this out together. When we all work together, especially as a family, it would be a shame to let that jerk Daniel take advantage all for nothing," Eleanor said incessantly, worried I might actually leave everything behind and walk away if I really gave up everything. "Their plan to take over my house would fail. Violet, just listen to your aunt. Offer Daniel $5 million and have him transfer the house to you. But where can I get that much money? There's no buts. Your father and I have discussed this. We might have been strict with you before, but in such significant matters, our whole family supports you. Don't worry about the $5 million. I still have some money saved for your brother's wedding, and I'll borrow some from his uncle. We'll make it work." "Victoria, I really can't accept this." Daniel said he'll only wait 3 days. And it's already the second day. $5 million isn't a small amount. How can you gather enough? And having to borrow from others? I don't want you to have to beg on my behalf. Why are you being so distant? Why can't we gather enough? It's just 3 days. Rest assured, I'll transfer the money to you tomorrow. Thank you, Victoria. You're really kind. Since you're so willing to give me the money, how can I refuse? Seeing that I agreed to take the money, Eleanor's tone immediately became lighter. No need to thank me, Violet. Once you're divorced, come back and stay with us. Our home will always have a room for you. I'll come to visit after the proceedings are over." After hanging up, Daniel and I looked at each other and smiled, knowing the bait we cast would soon reel in a catch. Daniel's embrace was filled with the pleasant scent of pine, intoxicating me. But time was pressing. We had no time to stay in bed. let alone do anything else. After all, in 6 days, we'd have endless time to do whatever we wanted. We quickly got out of bed and started another busy day. Today, Daniel had to transfer the house ownership at 10:30. We skipped breakfast and headed out. Back at the new house, Daniel took the property deeds and documents and left, while I stayed to pack our things. We hadn't lived here long, less than a year. And aside from the furniture, which I didn't want to take, there wasn't much. I packed our clothes in 2 suitcases, took some essentials and my jewelry, and left everything else behind. I didn't touch the food in the fridge or the stored supplies, thinking that if someone else were to move in, I hoped the food would help them for a while. I moved our belongings to the car in 2 trips, then went to meet Daniel at the real estate transaction center. By the time I met up with Daniel, my account had an additional $8 million. We then went to stock up on supplies, including lots of bottled water besides food. Daniel also bought 2 water purification systems. There was a well in the backyard, but it could be contaminated. The villa had a purification system, but nothing is guaranteed to last. Daniel truly prepared for every eventuality. Pretending we were stocking up for a supermarket, we shopped extensively at wholesale markets without arousing any suspicion. I did the shopping while Daniel handled the transportation. In the evenings, we didn't rest, but went to transport the supplies we had purchased earlier. On the 3rd night, I was moving things around in the warehouse when I received another call from Eleanor. "Violet, we've managed to gather the money for you. You can finally divorce Daniel," she said, "thanks to Victoria, then." I replied, after hanging up, my account was credited with an additional $5 million. Out of this $5 million, $5 million was what Eleanor had saved over the years, $400,000 was borrowed from Uncle Christopher, and $600,000 was from sources unknown to me that Christopher and Eleanor had borrowed from. I learned all this from the WeChat messages that Christopher and Eleanor had sent me over the past few days. Good, none of the people I despise would escape this. Uncle Christopher had often helped his sister Eleanor mistreat me when I was younger. They would definitely be furious when they find out the truth, but this is just the beginning. Daniel and I have prepared something special for them. Daniel found a contact who worked at a telecommunications company and entered their house under the pretext of a free router upgrade to install a hidden camera to show our appreciation. Daniel gave his contact 50,000 yuan and kindly reminded him that the pandemic was getting worse, advising him to stock up on supplies at home. The person agreed over the phone, but whether he would actually do it, we couldn't be sure. However, that was the limit of what we could do. I also bought 5 large freezers, placing 3 in the basement and 2 on the first floor. They were filled with pork, duck, chicken, fish, and shrimp that I had purchased. Daniel bought a lot of soundproofing cotton and covered the entire basement walls with it. If the villa is breached from the outside, in a worst-case scenario, the basement would be our last fortress. The supplies there would be enough for the 2 of us for 10 years. Throughout this time, Eleanor and Christopher kept calling me alternately to inquire about the divorce proceedings. Each time, I brushed them off by saying, "It's coming along. Just going through the procedures." Hearing this, all 3 of them, unsuspecting, happily hung up the phone, dreaming of their imminent fortunes. On the 5th day, we bought countless medications. Daniel had a client who owned a pharmacy, and we got a lot of medicine, alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, iodine, and gauze from them. The blast-proof doors were also delivered and installed. On the 6th day, we split up. I went to the mall and bought a lot of cold-weather clothing, including thick coats, warmers, electric blankets, and down comforters. Daniel went to buy something very important, vegetable seeds. We realized this morning during inventory that we had forgotten to buy the most essential vegetable seeds, even though we had bought carp for the pond and raised chickens in the backyard. Attentive Daniel went to fill this gap. When I passed by a baby store, I saw baby formula and on a whim, went in and bought all the formula, diapers, and children's clothes, although I had prepared countless contraceptives. And Daniel and I didn't plan on having children during these end times, but, just in case, what if one day we get too bored and want a soft, cuddly child to raise, or, what if there's an accident? It's better to be safe than sorry with these purchases. Besides, even if we really don't use them, these items are high-quality nutrients. We adults can eat them too, as usual. I asked the baby store to deliver the items to the warehouse, while I took the spoils from the mall back to the villa. Now that we had the money, Daniel and I each bought a large SUV. Every time we returned, we made sure to fill up the gas and then siphon it out. We've saved up quite a bit of gasoline now. Daniel also bought several propane tanks, which were placed in the greenhouse. When I returned to the villa, I found that Daniel had already arrived home and had brought back 2 adorable little ones. They were 2 dogs, one a golden retriever and the other a yellow farm dog, both dirty. Brought back by Daniel from who knows where, he found them on the road as stray dogs. Two guys somehow ended up wandering on the highway. Violet, I felt sorry for them, so I brought them back, Daniel said with a cautious tone, as if he was worried I wouldn't like them. I smiled gently and crouched down to play with the two adorable little ones. The golden retriever was very affectionate, eagerly pushing its head forward for a pat. Jojo, a pastoral dog, was a bit aloof and didn't come over on its own, but its tail was wagging happily. Truly, they are two lovely little fellows. I knew Daniel always had a soft spot for animals, so since he brought them back, we might as well keep them. Besides, we could afford it. We still had over 100,000 in the bank and weren't sure how to spend it. Might as well spend it on them, taking advantage of the early hour. We went to a pet store to get the two little guys dewormed, bathed, and vaccinated. We also bought dozens of bags of dog food to be delivered to our storage. Bathing the dogs took a while, and during the wait, we went to a nearby Chongqing hot pot restaurant for our meal. As expected, that was our last meal out. Tomorrow is the 7th day, with just one day left until the apocalypse, and according to the memories of my past life, some anomalies will start appearing tomorrow. For safety, we decided not to go out tomorrow, after the hot pot. We picked up the dogs and strolled around nearby. I spent the last bit of money on my card on street food at the night market, treating it as a final spree before the apocalypse. After spending all our money and as time was almost up, we went to our storage to haul all the supplies back home. By the time we got to bed again, it was already 4 a.m. The next day, we slept in until naturally waking up, and I checked my phone and scrolled through Weibo, apart from celebrity gossip. There was no other news. Then I opened TikTok, and just a couple of seconds in, a video popped up. At a subway station, someone suddenly went mad and started biting passers-by, injuring several people. Though the video was short, it was shocking enough. Looking at the location from where the video was posted, it was only 20 kilometers away, happening in our own city. Daniel held me tightly, as if seeking a sense of security from each other's embrace. We both knew that the apocalypse was indeed upon us. After scrolling through TikTok for a while, the two dogs occasionally came over to scratch at the door, and Daniel got up to feed them. I also got up to play with them. I found that Jojo, the pastoral dog, was very smart and could learn things quickly. The golden retriever, Ahua, could understand some commands. It must have had an owner before it was stray. At noon, we cooked some rice and heated up some spicy hot pot we had brought back from the night market the day before. After eating, we sat in the living room browsing our phones again. News of rabid people biting others appeared intermittently on the phone, with incidents occurring in different cities. After a while, those news items disappeared. I knew the authorities were still trying to control the situation, but they would soon realize that it was uncontrollable. However, discussions about the apocalypse had already started spreading, just like in my past life, and many people had begun to panic buy supplies. TikTok was full of videos of people frantically buying supplies. Seeing this, I opened the monitoring software on my pad, and there they all were on the camera. Christopher and Eleanor were there, living together as naturally as a family. Eleanor and Christopher were lying on the couch using their phones, Eleanor watching TV, and my dad tending to his goldfish tank. I couldn't help but scoff at these lazy people, none of whom had gone out to stock up on supplies. Just like in my past life, there had been warnings today, and they were all staying in my new house then. When I saw the news, I urged them to join me in stocking up on supplies, but none of them were willing to step outside. It was me who struggled through the crowd at the supermarket to get 2 bags of rice, which helped us get through the initial tough days. But these heartless people not only consumed everything without a trace, but also nearly got me killed. In this lifetime, without me gathering supplies for them, I'd like to see how they would survive without food. In the afternoon, there were more reports of rabid people biting others on the news. Daniel sent messages to all his friends he knew, subtly reminding them to stock up on more supplies. I also picked a few acquaintances and sent out a group message. After that, we all didn't want to look at our phones anymore. We took our dogs, Big Yellow and Little Flower, out to the yard to play for a while. Suddenly, Daniel felt that the truck in the front yard was really in the way, as it prevented the dogs from freely running around in the yard. We decided to move the truck next to another unoccupied villa. This villa was not far from ours, and it would serve as a perfect decoy, making the property management think that those were the people moving. No sooner said than done. Daniel grabbed the keys and we both set off. Midway, we suddenly heard a harsh roaring sound nearby. Someone was driving towards us. This villa area has always been very quiet, and in all our time here, we hadn't really seen any neighbors who could be so bold as to drive such a powerful car in this place. Luckily, the zombie virus hadn't fully broken out yet, otherwise, hitting the gas like that could have attracted countless zombies. Soon, we saw the flashy car's owner. He was a young man in a convertible sports car, and sitting next to him was a woman with striking red lips dressed elegantly. Even though she wore large sunglasses, I recognized her immediately. She was the infamous third lead in a popular recent TV drama, who had more screen time than the main actress and was heavily criticized online. They said she was a coal magnate's darling, so the man next to her must be the coal magnate, just as I was trying to get a better look at the coal magnate's face. I suddenly realized that our car had sharply turned, nearly drifting. That's when I noticed Daniel's pale face, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, as if he was about to crush it. "Daniel, what's wrong?" When we reached our planned spot, before we even got out of the car, we saw two SUVs pass by on the nearby road. Seeing this, Daniel's expression grew even more solemn, and he said in a deep voice, "Violet, let's head home quickly. The people who just passed by seem very dangerous." I have known Daniel for many years, but I had never seen him this panicked before. Without asking further, I got out of the car with Daniel and we walked towards the villa. Daniel led me, deliberately choosing rough, uneven paths as if afraid of being tracked. All the way, we could occasionally hear the roar of cars. Seemingly many people were returning to their villas. Fortunately, we made it back home safely. As soon as we got home, Daniel quickly locked the main door and turned on all the surrounding surveillance. After completing these tasks, he seemed to relax a bit, letting out a long sigh of relief. "Violet, let's go up to the third floor and check things out." "Okay." I knew Daniel wanted to observe the situation outside. The third floor had a geographical advantage and was equipped with a complete set of binoculars, which made it very convenient to monitor the surroundings. Once we got to the third floor, Daniel and I each picked up a pair of binoculars and began observing. Big Yellow and Little Flower, very understanding of the situation, didn't make a fuss and quietly sat by our feet. I saw that many of the previously uninhabited villas were now occupied, especially one large villa not more than 200 meters from us, which housed about 7 or 8 people. Moreover, 3 of them are young men. The best part: the coal tycoon Starling is here too. Turns out, this family is the legendary coal tycoon. No wonder their villa is so massive. These people are bustling around the yard, occasionally moving things in and out of the house. It seems they are quite sensitive to the outside situation, knowing to stock up on supplies and hide out here. Perhaps these wealthy folks had their own channels to learn about certain things ahead of time. "They're all here," Daniel suddenly said, in what was his second sentence since coming back. "Who?" I quickly asked. "My uncle, aunt, and my dear cousins." "Where?" "Right across from us, not even 200 meters away." So it turns out the coal tycoon is Daniel's uncle's family. That house across from us must have belonged to Daniel's family before. Daniel's greedy uncle took almost all of his parents' inheritance while he was still a minor and has been suppressing Daniel over the years. Daniel despises them deeply. We didn't even invite them to our wedding, so I don't know them. I never expected our first meeting to be here. Suddenly, a hand reached around my waist. Daniel had moved closer without me noticing. "Violet, this family is dangerous. I didn't expect them to be hiding out here from the start." Through Daniel's stories, I learned the true nature of this family. Daniel's uncle Carter is nothing short of a bandit. In a world where everyone is for themselves, his family has thrived. He even became the leader of a small group. After the apocalypse, Daniel had seen them. Carter and his sons, armed and dangerous, would go from floor to floor, breaking into people's homes to loot their supplies. Many of their victims were defenseless, and if they dared to resist, they would be killed. This family lacks any respect for life. They are true desperados. Daniel always suspected that his parents' accident might have been orchestrated by them. Otherwise, his father, who had been a race car driver, couldn't have possibly had an accident on such a well-maintained road. Unfortunately, over the years, he never found concrete evidence, potential witnesses, and the perpetrator mysteriously disappeared. Carter, guilty and fearful, has always been suppressing him. Worried about him growing up to seek revenge, I was deeply shaken by what I heard. Of course, I knew what having such neighbors meant. It was like having a ticking time bomb nearby. These people would likely target us first once their supplies ran out. After all, our homes were so close to each other. No wonder Daniel looked so upset earlier. "Violet, we need to be even more discreet and careful from now on." "Yes, I will." "Jojo, Toyo, you two must be quiet." Not a sound. Jojo, with his big watery eyes, seemed to understand as he nuzzled my leg with his big head. Toyo also wagged its tail obediently. My anxious heart felt slightly comforted. For the sake of these two little darlings, Daniel and I would need to plan carefully. This night was destined to be a long one. Tonight, we stayed on the third floor. The night made it easier to observe, and we kept watch outside with binoculars from time to time. I noticed that the previously dimly lit villa community, where only about 10 households had their lights on, now has 52 homes illuminated. And that count of 52 doesn't even include our house. It seems that the majority of the residents in this villa community have returned. We spent a long time scrolling through our phones, but didn't come across any notable news. It was as if everyone had just fallen asleep. Yet, I was struck with insomnia. With my tablet in hand, I started downloading various things. Considering I might not be able to access books in the future, I subscribed to an online service and downloaded countless books. Whether they were novels or classics didn't matter. I also downloaded books on agricultural science, hydroelectric machinery, electronics, traditional Chinese medicine, basically, any useful book I could find, I downloaded with a single click. Daniel couldn't sleep either. Seeing me downloading, he also started to download stuff onto 2 tablets. We need to back everything up. It's clearly not enough to have all this important information on just one device. You're right, sir. Daniel gave me a gentle smile and embraced me as we continued downloading together. Eventually, remembering we had 2 little pets at home, I downloaded some pet-related books, even one on how to help a sow give birth. We finally put down our tablets and went to bed around 5 a.m. When we woke up again, it was already noon. Daniel checked his phone and then buried his head in my arms. Violet, the apocalypse has arrived as expected. Yes, the apocalypse had come. The internet was in chaos. Serious incidents of people biting each other had broken out everywhere, and the media was now referring to these attackers as zombies. Help, someone save me. These chilling cries seemed to come from nowhere. We grabbed a telescope and looked out, only to see a man at a villa at the foot of the mountain, biting a woman next to him like a madman. Soon, that woman turned into a zombie as well. Looking around, I noticed that 5 households in the villa had turned into zombies. Meanwhile, Daniel's uncle's family across from us, along with their maid, were still having lunch. Their house had spotless floor-to-ceiling windows through which I could see the family being well cared for by the maid, enjoying delicious steaks. Compared to the misfortune of others, their family seemed blessed by heaven. It was uncertain how long their good days would last. Violet, let's stop watching and go have lunch. Okay, indeed, watching couldn't help anyone in these perilous times. Just surviving was already incredibly difficult. Forgive us for being ordinary people, unable to help others. I made some green bean porridge, Daniel stir-fried some pork with green peppers, and we also prepared some marinated beef and pig ears. We bought a lot of marinated meat, vacuum-sealed some, froze some, and refrigerated the rest. Outside, the sun blazed fiercely, but we stayed cool with the air conditioning, enjoying our green bean porridge to beat the heat. Fortunately, the utilities were still running, so life wasn't too difficult for now. But I knew this was just the beginning. In 10 days, the internet would go down, followed by power and water outages, and the temperature outside would continue to rise. Most people couldn't withstand the intense heat and chose to leave their relatively safe homes, leading to more turning into zombies, worsening the plight of humanity. After eating, I leisurely lay on the sofa and turned on the monitoring software on my tablet. I wondered how my stepmother and her family were doing. Strangely, there was nobody in their living room. Perhaps they had gone out to stock up on supplies. That would be something, like the sun rising in the west. Just as I was pondering this, my phone rang. It was my dear stepmother Eleanor on the phone. Hey, Victoria, Violet, why did you just pick up the phone now? I almost thought you were dead. Hurry up and open the door. We're all at your doorstep. At my doorstep, yes. Right at your doorstep. Do you know how dangerous it is outside? There are zombies everywhere. Christopher almost got bitten. We thought your neighborhood would be safer, so we made our way here with great difficulty. Hurry up and let us in. Daniel and I exchanged glances, seeing the humor in each other's eyes. I didn't expect this family to take it upon themselves to head over to our new house. They really thought that by paying $5 million, the house was theirs. But then again, this is exactly the kind of thing this family would do. Daniel said that the final buyer of our house was a real estate agency. Seeing that we sold the house at such a low price, they knew it was a great opportunity to make money, so their company bought it first and planned to slowly find a buyer to sell it at a higher price. Therefore, that house is currently unoccupied. It would be impossible for them to knock on my door. I leisurely replied, but Victoria, I'm not at home right now. What? You're not at home? Then where's Daniel? I don't know about Daniel. After we finished our paperwork, he left. When can you come back? Eleanor's tone was clearly frantic. I held back a smile and said, I don't know, Victoria, it's so dangerous outside. I'm hiding in an alley, and there are zombies everywhere. I'm really scared. Could you ask Christopher to come and get me? What? Send Christopher to pick you up? That's too dangerous. He can't go. Victoria, but I'm really scared. Hang up. Be smart and come back quickly. We're waiting at your doorstep. I chuckled at the turned-off phone. They could keep waiting. I turned off the surveillance and stopped paying attention to them while the electricity was still on. I took out all the charging devices and compulsively charged them one by one. Daniel, meanwhile, was walking Ahua and Jojo in the yard with an umbrella. I couldn't stay idle either. I fed the Rhode Island chickens, provided them with water, and cleaned the coop. After finishing all this, I was drenched in sweat. The weather seemed even hotter, looking at the fish pond in the yard. I wondered if the fish would turn into fish soup if the heat continued. Daniel and I found some spare tools in the yard. We moved the tools into the living room and made a simple sunshade for the fish. Daniel also froze a lot of ice and placed it in the pond to cool the water down. At the same time, we turned on all the oxygen pumps. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing, either from Christopher or Eleanor. I knew they were still waiting at my doorstep. Every time I answered, I told them to wait a little longer. I mentioned that I had gathered a lot of supplies, but there were many zombies around. And as soon as there were fewer zombies, I would quickly come back with food and drinks. The last time I talked, Eleanor was almost crying. She said she hadn't eaten or drunk all day, and it was very hot at our doorstep. She felt like she was going to die from the heat. As her best friend, I naturally comforted her in the most caring tone, telling her not to worry and that I would come back as soon as it was a bit safer here. Among the supplies I had managed to gather were refreshing colas, delicious marinated chicken, and her favorite hot dry noodles. Hearing this, Eleanor cried even louder. "Shut up." Suddenly, Eleanor's scolding voice came through the phone. "What are you crying for? Aren't you afraid of attracting those monsters? It's bad. It seems like the monsters are coming up." It was my dad's voice, which usually went unnoticed. It really is monsters. Run." A burst of static came through. And then the phone call ended. Had they encountered zombies? Daniel and I looked at each other, both slightly shocked. We hadn't even made our move yet. How could they just disconnect like that? It infuriated me. It was like preparing a powerful move that wasn't used because the enemy was already knocked out. To ease my frustration, Daniel made hot pot for dinner. Looking at the fiery red butter in the pot, I said, "Isn't this just adding fuel to the fire?" Daniel shook his head and placed a slice of cooked tripe into my bowl. "On the contrary, this is fighting poison with poison." I took a bite of the tripe. It was delightfully crunchy. Well, this method of fighting poison with poison seemed quite effective after all. Indeed, he is a man of great wisdom. That night, we drew the blackout curtains and watched TV for a while. The news continuously urged everyone to be cautious, stock up on supplies, and stay indoors. They promised to rescue everyone to a safe place once the situation was under control. Seeing this, Daniel switched the channel to a movie station. The movie channel was playing Train to Busan, timely as ever. It felt like a lifetime since I had last watched a movie, and I didn't mind watching Train to Busan. I made some popcorn in the microwave, and Daniel opened a bottle of red wine. We lay on the couch in the living room, with our dogs, Jojo and Ahua, lying beside us. We ate popcorn and sipped the delicious wine while watching the zombie film. Finding this odd combination surprisingly harmonious. If it weren't for the apocalypse, living like this with Daniel wouldn't be too bad, but I didn't know that Daniel had been worried all along. Late at night, I was awakened by a frantic knocking on the door. Bang, bang, bang. "Is anyone there? Please open the door. Help!" Bark. I woke up startled and quickly covered the mouths of Jojo and Ahua, who were at the foot of the bed. When I looked at the bed, I realized Daniel was not there. The knocking and cries for help outside continued, each one more dreadful than the last, sending chills down my spine. Ding. It was the sound of my text message alert. "Daniel, Violet, don't go out. Come to the third floor." I signaled to Jojo and Ahua to stay quiet. Then, I quickly headed up to the third floor. There, Daniel was observing the outside scene through binoculars. As I approached, he whispered, "Violet, the one knocking is Carter's nanny, after the full outbreak of zombies today. She was worried about her son and wanted to go home, but there was no one left to look after them. Her family forbade her from returning, so she sneaked out in the dark." "Why did she knock on our door after running out?" Daniel handed me another pair of binoculars. "Because she ran into zombies." I took the binoculars and indeed saw several zombies steadily advancing in her direction, although the zombies were not moving fast. If she ran and was lucky, she might just be able to escape. The banging on the door continued, each knock louder than the last. Jojo and Ahua whined softly by our feet, clearly agitated. I looked towards the front door, feeling equally restless inside. It wasn't so much the fear of the person outside, but rather the concern that such loud knocking might attract a horde of zombies. Saving that person was out of the question. We had witnessed too many instances resembling the story of the farmer and the snake in these apocalyptic times. Besides, We ourselves had been victims of that very tale. Why isn't she knocking on your uncle's door? I asked. She'll realize soon and head there, Daniel replied, true to Daniel's words. As soon as his voice faded, the person outside seemed to understand that it was futile to expect anyone here, and with the zombies drawing closer by the minute, she ran towards the Carter family's villa. But how could the zombies let their prey escape so easily? They chased after her in a frenzy, caught off guard. She was bitten harshly on the right arm by one of the zombies. However, the potential unleashed by humans in extreme situations is boundless. Eventually, she managed to stagger back to safety. The quiet of the deep night was shattered again by loud knocks and cries for help. Would the Carters help her? Soon, I saw the lights in their house turn on. Then, a brash young man with a sports car came out of the house. He stood at the door, loudly scolding the person knocking. And then through the iron-barred fence, he noticed the zombies getting closer. Master, please, open the door, save me, the zombies are coming. Shut up and get lost, the man retorted. Do you want to attract those monsters here? Move on and bother someone else. No, I can't, I'll die out here, the nanny pleaded. In a frenzy, she grabbed the iron bars of the fence and tried to climb over, oblivious to the sharp points piercing her palms. The zombies followed her lead, trying to climb over as well. The man in the courtyard screamed in fear as more lights in the villa turned on. Just as the nanny was about to successfully climb over, I saw a man rush out of the house and fire 2 shots at her. Bang, bang! The sharp sound of gunfire made me shudder. Her motion to climb over froze midair, and her body was pulled down by a zombie behind her. Attracted by the fresh blood, the zombies temporarily forgot about the people inside the courtyard. The 2 men sneakily ran back inside the house, but I clearly remembered the face of the man who had fired the shots. It was a middle-aged man with a ruthless expression, his face ghostly and terrifying under the cold moonlight. That was Daniel's Uncle Carter, who apparently owned a gun. No wonder this family had managed to thrive in the apocalypse. How could ordinary people possess firearms unless they were never ordinary to begin with? They were no clean businessmen. The death of Daniel's parents was very likely their doing. Now, the problem we faced was dealing with the armed Carter family once their supplies ran out. The Carters now possessed firearms, catching us off guard, especially Daniel, who was even more worried now. The next day, Daniel got up and devised a strict fitness regimen for us both. If our villa was ever breached, we would have to rely solely on ourselves. Fortunately, we had the foresight to buy plenty of fitness equipment. After breakfast, I started running on the treadmill. Daniel has been downloading various fitness videos, learning to lift weights and exercise muscles as he downloads them. Jojo and a flower enjoy their own time in the yard, where they can roam freely only in the mornings and evenings. At other times, the outdoor temperature is too high. Fortunately, we have added soundproofing material around the outdoor unit of the air conditioner and made it silent, so we're not worried about attracting zombies with the noise of the air conditioner. I'm just not sure if other households are as lucky as us, daring to use the air conditioner despite the risk of attracting zombies. After running for 30 minutes, I continue my workout with a Pamela dance routine on my yoga mat. Only after that do I start preparing lunch. Today's lunch is braised pig trotters and seaweed egg drop soup. I fry the star anise and pig trotters until fragrant, then add water and transfer everything into a pressure cooker. Daniel has soundproofed the inside and outside of our home, so even using a noisy kitchen hood isn't a concern. Soon, the soft and sticky braised pig trotters are ready. Served with green beans and carrots for a nutritious meal, our staple is sweet potato rice, which is anything but bland. I also boil big bones in another pot for the dogs to gnaw on. Once everything is ready, we start our lunch. After lunch, Daniel decides to modify the greenhouse. We still have a lot of green vegetables in the fridge, but they will spoil in about a week. Although we have a lot of frozen tomatoes, we can't eat them with potatoes every day. Even delicious food can become tiresome after a while. So, the real solution is to grow our own. We have space in the yard. But the current high outdoor temperatures, which are expected to rise even further, make it unsuitable for planting anything. Daniel installed 4 large air conditioners in our greenhouse, anticipating the post-apocalyptic weather. Whether it's extremely hot or cold, we can grow vegetables in the greenhouse. Working is also a form of exercise, and I actively participate in modifying the greenhouse. The greenhouse has many flower pots and various types of nutrient-rich soils, but most of the plants inside had died. Our task is to dig out the dead plants and sow vegetable seeds. After reading a professional book on vegetable planting for a while, Daniel advises me to plant a variety. Planting a variety of plants together can effectively prevent widespread pests and diseases. All right, you've read more, so you must be right. We start with cucumbers, Chinese cabbage, eggplants, green beans, as well as spinach, scallions, and cilantro, not planting too much. Daniel says this is just a trial field, we're starting small to practice. Most importantly, he's worried that if we plant too many fresh vegetables, and we can't finish them, it would be wasteful. Then he plans to plant the remaining flower pots with potatoes, sweet potatoes, and sticky corn, as these are easier to store and we can plant more. Plus, I like fresh sticky corn. Boiling one every morning is a very healthy breakfast. Time really flies when you're busy. Before I know it, it's already the afternoon. Just as I'm about to take a shower, my phone suddenly alerts me with 2 messages. I check and see that the alerts are from the surveillance software installed at my stepmother's house, detecting movement inside. What's going on? Could it be that Eleanor and the others are so fortunate to have safely returned home? I casually wipe the sweat from my face and sit on the sofa to turn on my pad. Soon, the figures of Eleanor and Christopher appear on the screen. I can't believe their luck, returning like this. Wait, where's my dad? Where is he? Victoria, Christopher's injury seems to have gotten worse. What should we do? Is he going to end up like Uncle Lynn, turning into a zombie? Eleanor said in horror, pointing at the dark purple wound on Christopher's back. Shut up, it's all your fault, you bitch. If you hadn't pushed our Christopher, how could he have been bitten by a zombie? Eleanor's face was as terrifying as a ghost's. Glaring fiercely at Eleanor, as if she wanted to devour her. It was Uncle Lynn's fault. He suddenly turned into a zombie and scared me, otherwise I wouldn't have pushed Christopher out, Eleanor said timidly. Just shut up. Eleanor glared at Eleanor, almost driven mad by anger. Eleanor was so frightened by Eleanor that she didn't dare to speak for a long while. However, Christopher's wound visibly worsened. Victoria, Christopher's wound seems to be getting darker. He's definitely going to turn into a zombie. Let's drive him out. Eleanor still couldn't help herself, her voice trembling as she spoke. No, don't drive me out, Mom, I'm really scared. Christopher babbled incoherently. Seeing her son like this, Eleanor immediately went over to comfort him tenderly. Son, don't worry, Mom will never drive you out. My Christopher, the apple of Mom's eye, you'll be fine. Mom will take good care of you, even if you turn into a terrifying zombie. Victoria. What do you mean by that? Eleanor asked, her eyes wide with horror. Exactly what I said, Eleanor said with a neurotic expression, frightening Eleanor so much she stepped back several paces. Even I, watching from the other side of the surveillance video, was startled by her expression. She seemed crazy. Soon, I understood what Eleanor meant. She found some sheets in the house, cut them into strips, and had Eleanor help tie Christopher up in his bedroom. As for how they tied him up, I didn't see. It's too bad. This monitor only shows their living room. I just heard Eleanor occasionally scolding Eleanor, and the unique groaning sounds of zombies. It wasn't until Daniel brought me the cooked snail noodle soup that I saw them come out, with added marinated egg and chicken feet. I looked down and saw my favorite combination. Thank you, sir. I took the chopsticks and started to enjoy my meal. Daniel came over to watch the monitor with me, and it proved to be a decent distraction during dinner. After a while, Eleanor finally came out of Christopher's bedroom. She looked dazed, as if she had gone mad. Then Eleanor came out, fetched a basin of water from the bathroom, and went back in. Mother's love is truly great, even if Christopher had turned into a zombie. She didn't forget to wash him. Her own son is a treasure. Others' children are just grass. This lifetime, let her also taste the piercing pain of losing a loved one. It really is karma. Now only she and Eleanor are left alone in this room. How will she get along with this woman who caused her son's death? I am very curious indeed. After dinner, Daniel went upstairs to check the external situation. Actually, I think he mainly went to check on the Carter family. After a quick shower, I drew the blackout curtains, turned on the TV to play the first episode of Empresses in the Palace, and continued to observe Eleanor and her on my iPad. The two of them are now huddled in the living room. Victoria, is there really nothing left to eat at home? I just checked, and there are only a few bottles of Coke left in the fridge. There's nothing else, Eleanor whispered softly. Eleanor was never one to cook, and her home wasn't usually stocked with much food since she disliked leftovers and anything that wasn't fresh. At home, it was always my strict father who did the cooking and grocery shopping. He would go to the market every morning to buy the freshest ingredients for her. She didn't like leftovers, so my timid father never dared to cook too much. As a result, I was always hungry as a child. If there wasn't enough food, I naturally ended up with the least. Later, when I started dating Daniel and told him about these things, he was shocked for a long time before feeling deeply sorry for me. He couldn't believe that in modern society, a family with both parents working could let their child go hungry. There might still be some potatoes on the kitchen floor, Eleanor said after a long pause. Eleanor glanced in the kitchen and then came out with a gloomy face. The weather is too hot. The potatoes have gone bad. Then go look again. Why ask me? Can I magically produce food for you, or perhaps you could go outside and bring us back something to eat?" Eleanor quickly shook her head. "I'll look in the kitchen again." This time, Eleanor finally found some rice in the cabinet, but the rice had bugs in it. When Eleanor brought the rice up from the kitchen, I clearly saw countless moths and weevils crawling out of it. "The rice has bugs. Victoria, are we still going to eat it?" "Of course. We eat," Eleanor responded. "What's the alternative?" Starved to death, Eleanor snatched the rice from Eleanor's hand and started to cook it. Their last meal was rice mixed with soy sauce. I'm not sure if it was because there were too many bugs and they couldn't be washed off, or if Eleanor intentionally didn't wash them off, but the rice was full of bugs, and Eleanor vomited while eating, yet Eleanor ate like a soulless machine, shoveling the rice into her mouth. While eating, she taunted Eleanor. "Eat up! Who knows if there will be another meal after this?" She frightened Eleanor until her face turned pale. The intermittent heaving sounds from Christopher in the bedroom sounded like the perfect soundtrack to this scene, making it seem more dramatic than a palace intrigue drama. But what I didn't expect was that the events of the night would be 1,000 times more sensational than those of the day. After Daniel came down, I saw that Eleanor had fallen asleep. So I turned off the TV and the pad and went to rest with Daniel until midnight, when Daniel woke me up. "Quick, look, your stepmother has killed Eleanor." "What?" I woke up instantly from my sleep and looked at the pad in Daniel's hand. This night owl must have woken up in the middle of the night to check the situation upstairs and peek at the pad. Unexpectedly, he witnessed such a dramatic scene. On the screen, a knife was stuck in Eleanor's stomach, and she looked as if she wouldn't make it. "Victoria, why did you kill me?" Eleanor spoke with a fierce expression. "Why? Because my Christopher is hungry. You ate dinner tonight." "But he hasn't yet," Eleanor incredulously said. But he's turned into a zombie. It's all your fault. If it hadn't been for you, how could my lovely son have turned into a zombie? Now, slicing you up for my son to eat is only what you owe him. It wasn't me who turned Christopher into a zombie, it was you." "Nonsense. If you hadn't pushed Uncle Lin out to fend off the zombies, he wouldn't have been bitten. If he hadn't been bitten, he wouldn't have turned into a zombie. And if he hadn't turned into a zombie, he wouldn't have terrified me, and I wouldn't have pushed Christopher. It was you. It's all your fault." "No, you're talking nonsense, you despicable woman." Enraged and humiliated, Eleanor decisively slashed Eleanor's throat. What followed was an exceedingly gruesome scene. I couldn't bear to look directly, so Daniel related to me. Eleanor dismembered Eleanor. Parts of her were fed to Christopher in the bedroom, while others were stored in the freezer. It seems she planned to feed more to Christopher the next day. Distracted by the incident, I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep well. Surprisingly, I had an exceptionally sweet sleep. Evil begets evil, dog eats dog. I was delighted. The demise of this vile couple was truly satisfying. Now only my dear stepmother remains. I wonder how long she can survive alone in this hopeless apocalypse, guarding her zombie son. The next day, I woke up early for once, feeling refreshed, and had an egg, a glass of milk, and an apple for breakfast. Then, I turned on the monitor again. Eleanor was also having breakfast on the screen, a bowl of rice. However, unlike yesterday, there was a dish of meat on the table. Thinking about what the meat might be made from almost made me vomit up my dinner from the night before. This woman is truly insane, or rather, she has always been this crazy. I quickly turned off the pad and went to the greenhouse to get some fresh air with Daniel. Daniel was continuing his work from yesterday in the greenhouse, and I joined him by putting on gloves, as he planted vegetables. He shared his recent observations with me. The number of zombies in our community has increased. And I also saw a few wearing security uniforms. It seems the security post has been compromised too. We hadn't joined the community management group chat, so we were completely out of the loop regarding local issues. Thus, they probably ignored our existence subconsciously. The Carter family is having a tough time too. The blood of their maid spilled into the yard and attracted several zombies. It's their own fault, really. They are afraid to add fuel to the fire by attracting more zombies. And in this hot weather, they dare not use the air conditioning. Knowing Carter's temperament, I bet he won't last many days before he takes action. What should we do? Watch and wait, and take the opportunity to see how many weapons they have. Okay. In the following days, we continued to tend to the vegetables in the greenhouse. Under our careful care, many seeds had already sprouted green shoots. Besides farming, Daniel's pastime was observing the Carter family's situation from the third floor. My pastime was to turn on the pad and see what crazy things Eleanor was up to. She treated Christopher as if he were perfectly normal until the fifth night when her refrigerator ran out of meat. Then, my long silent phone rang once again. I looked at the screen, seeing Eleanor holding her phone, and a smirk of amusement appeared on my lips. "Hello, Victoria, Violet, are you dead? If not, you should come back. Your dad isn't feeling well. He wants to see you. He wants to see me, but I can't come back. What do you mean you can't come back? That's your dad. Eleanor was getting frantic. I chuckled softly, but Eleanor told me my dad is already gone. Victoria, where did you see him? What? Eleanor told you. That bitch. When did she tell you? Just last night. She called me. Last night. No, that can't be. She clearly already. What clearly? Nothing. Nothing. What exactly did she tell you? She told me that without waiting for me, you all went home. On the way, my dad and Christopher encountered zombies and both got into trouble. Now, it's only you and her staying together. Victoria, my dad is already dead. Why are you lying to me? No, I didn't lie to you. And with such hot weather, how could Eleanor say she's very cold? Where exactly are you? Eleanor said she's very cold. No, I don't believe. Beep beep beep. Eleanor hung up the phone. I curled my lips in satisfaction. Old witch, can't scare you to death. Eleanor was clearly frightened by me. She suspiciously kept opening the refrigerator and finally washed the whole house and refrigerator with water. Seeing her distress made me happy, and then I bounced up to the third floor to share my joy with Daniel. When I got there, Daniel wasn't standing by the window as usual. Instead, he was sitting on the floor, assembling something with a bunch of electronic components and a drone. Daniel, what are you up to? Violet, hang on, I'll be done in a sec. Daniel placed the assembled electronic components onto the drone and then mounted a large speaker on top. What's this? Violet, how about we pull an all-nighter tonight? Sure, I'll grab us some beers and fire up the grill. It had been a while since Daniel was this excited about staying up late, so tonight was bound to be entertaining. Plus, I still had that mysterious gift to secretly deliver to Eleanor later at night. I headed downstairs, greased the grill in the kitchen, and cooked up some chicken wings, beef, and lamb skewers. At 12:30 a.m., we were sitting on the third floor, enjoying the barbecue and sipping beers, with two adorable dogs lying by our feet. Life couldn't be more peaceful. When it struck 1 a.m., Daniel put down his beer and announced that the show was about to start. The drone slowly lifted off in front of me, its wings roaring loudly in the silent night. The zombies roaming around the villa area instantly got excited and started following the direction of the drone. Daniel maneuvered the drone to land on the rooftop of the Carter villa. He then pressed a button on the controller, and the speaker on the drone started playing Glorious Years. The loud noise drove the zombies to furiously bash into the Carter's villa. Under the cover of night, the zombies awkwardly moved their limbs, almost as if they were heading to a grand carnival with the music playing in the background. Lights turned on in the Carter's villa, and shadows flickered across the windows as people inside panicked, trying to locate the source of the sound. But how could they know the drone was on the rooftop? As more zombies gathered, the long-hidden Carter family couldn't hold back any longer, and someone fired a shot at the zombies. Bang! A zombie's head exploded. Impressive. Their shooting was spot on, however. The gunshot didn't deter the mindless zombies. Instead, it made them even more frenzied. They precisely locked onto the source of the sound, broke through the iron railings into the yard, and started slamming against the front door of the villa. Women's screams, men's roars, the zombies growling, and occasional gunfire made this night extraordinarily eventful. The fight nearby was heating up. I finished my beer, glanced at my phone. It was 2 a.m. It was time to deliver that wicked stepmother's gift. I silently opened the surveillance intercom on my pad and played the eeriest music I had found online. A second later, Eleanor's living room was engulfed by this terrifying music. Unexpectedly, there was no movement from Eleanor's bedroom. What's going on? Could it be that she's that tough, sleeping so soundly? Soon, I realized I had overestimated her, because I saw her bedroom door quietly open a crack. I chuckled to myself, then switched to a doorbell sound. The sharp ring of the doorbell, ding dong, echoed sharply through the quiet space, confusing her thoroughly. Gradually, Eleanor appeared before me, clutching a knife and nervously walking to the door. Who's there? Who is knocking? It's me, Victoria. I'm right behind you. I mimicked Eleanor's nasal voice. Are you Eleanor? What are you here for? Eleanor quickly turned around, looking behind her. Unfortunately for her, there was nothing but empty space behind her. There's nothing there. Where are you? Eleanor, you little wretch. Where the hell are you? I'm right behind you, Victoria. I successfully drove Eleanor even crazier. She screamed furiously, her eyes red as she searched every room for Eleanor's ghostly figure. But how could she possibly find her? Victoria, I can't bear to leave Christopher behind. I'm taking him with me. No way. Absolutely not. You can't touch my Christopher. Hearing this, Eleanor ran towards the room where Christopher was tied up, like a frantic mother hen protecting her chicks, only she forgot that she had tied Christopher to the bed yesterday, worried that he might be uncomfortable, so she had switched to a longer rope, allowing him some freedom to move around the room. Almost instantly, I heard violent fighting noises and Eleanor's desperate screams coming from Christopher's room. When I saw Eleanor again, her body was covered in wounds, half of her face was missing. It was a tragic sight. Her wounds had turned black and purple, and I knew she would soon turn into a zombie. Eleanor, you wretch, are you satisfied now? Eleanor was still blaming herself. I felt like a ridiculous clown. I pressed the intercom button and said, Victoria, didn't you kill Eleanor already? There's no Eleanor here. Who? Eleanor was extremely surprised. Is that you, Violet? Yes, it's me. How could you not recognize my voice? There was never any Eleanor, it was always me. You really are a scaredy cat. I just scared you a bit and you're so frightened, you wretch. Violet, why are you doing this to me? I even gathered $5 million for you a few days ago. Have you forgotten? Why, don't you know how you've treated me since we were kids? And, was that $5 million really for me? Weren't you planning to eventually take my house away? That money was an advance investment for your own house. Do you know why you couldn't find me at my new house that day? Because I wasn't there at all. I had sold that house long ago. Sold it? How is that possible? What about my $5 million, you wretch? Give me back my money, Eleanor cried out in despair. I chuckled. My dear Victoria, of course I spent that $5 million. I truly thank you for giving me $5 million, otherwise, Daniel and I wouldn't be living so comfortably now. We bought lots of delicious food and drinks with that money. You have no idea how cozy our life is now. You and Daniel didn't get divorced. Eleanor was stunned. Of course not. How could I possibly divorce Daniel when we love each other so much? I don't believe a word of Eleanor's nonsense. We never thought about divorcing. We saw right through your family's schemes long ago. My dear Victoria, if you weren't so greedy, and had stayed comfortably in your old shabby home, maybe my father and Christopher wouldn't have turned into zombies so quickly, and you wouldn't look like a ghost now. It's all because of you, you greedy woman. It's all your fault. My words completely devastated Eleanor. She shook her head frantically, saying, Impossible, impossible. You must be lying to me. You can't be that smart. You couldn't have known our plans in advance. You're deceiving me. She couldn't admit that all the mistakes were her own until she saw a family portrait on the TV stand. She stared at it for a long time, tears mixed with blood streaming down her face. It's all my fault. Christopher, Mom was wrong. Mom is here with you now. Eleanor turned into a zombie as well. From then on, there were 2 zombies locked in that house. I turned off the pad and permanently deleted the monitoring software. I didn't want to know what happened there anymore. Eleanor, Christopher, my father, they all received the punishment they deserved. I felt relieved, stood up, and let out a long breath. Daniel was still monitoring the situation with the Carter family, where tensions were high. I walked over to Daniel and wrapped my arms around his waist. Daniel, the bad guys have been punished. Yes, Violet, they got what they deserved. These villains will soon be finished too. Hearing this, I picked up my binoculars and looked over. The zombies had broken through the front door of the villa and rushed in. Gunshots rang out sporadically from inside the villa, and zombies fell one after another. However, there were too many zombies, and they couldn't be killed off in a short time, unnoticed. A man's leg was bitten by a zombie. Daniel mentioned that it was Carter's second son, Benjamin, when another zombie lunged at Charles, the eldest son. He immediately pushed out his beloved little star to shield himself. What made them even more horrifying was that on their way to the second floor, because Benjamin's injured leg slowed him down, Carter shot his own son in the head without hesitation. Such decisiveness truly showed how ruthless this family was. If I still had any doubts before, now I was completely sure that Daniel's parents were definitely killed by this family. They have at least 5 guns, and plenty of ammunition. But from the last gunfight, it looks like their firepower is running low. Indeed, if Benjamin's pistol hadn't run out of bullets, he wouldn't have been bitten by the zombies. With a nanny, Benjamin, and a star dead, only 4 people were left in the Carter family: Carter, his wife Arthur, the eldest son Charles, and the youngest son Christopher. Arthur was no simple woman either. She handled a gun almost as well as Carter. Of course, this woman had been in jail before, a genuine tough girl. And somehow these 2 ended up together. My dad was very against their relationship, but this woman was cunning, and she eventually entered our family. But over the years, the relationship between our 2 families has not been good. This woman held a grudge because my dad opposed their union, and she caused quite a bit of trouble at home, so there was this underlying resentment here. This woman probably played a significant role in the affair concerning Daniel's parents. Today, Daniel's strategy to pull the rug out from under them was meant to make the Carters completely collapse. We didn't expect them to keep their cool, hiding in the hot villa for 5 days without making a move. Even with zombies surrounding them, the less they acted, the more tense I knew Daniel would be, who knew what this family was plotting. The best strategy was to strike first, catching them off guard, now that their cards were on the table. We knew exactly what they were holding. The outcome awaiting them now will certainly not be a pleasant one, because Daniel and I will never let them off the hook. 8 days after Doomsday, today the internet is still up, and we still have water and electricity. Life on the second floor of the Carters' villa seems to be bearable for now. Through their floor-to-ceiling windows, we saw Carter and Arthur constantly on the phone, trying to contact someone, Daniel said. Looking across, Violet. We can't let them roam freely on the second floor anymore. Indeed, in the past life, the Carter family managed to live so freely during the apocalypse, probably because they had external support. After all, Arthur is no ordinary woman. She has underworld connections. That's also why their family has access to guns. Since you've been constantly using your mobile phones to contact the outside world, we'll make you an island of isolation from information, Daniel. Foreseeing that drones might scout our home after the apocalypse, purchased several signal jammers. He maneuvered the drones to drop the jammers on the roof of the Carters' house, then waited for the drone to return before using the remote control to cut off their signal. I clearly saw Carter and Arthur, and their instant collapse inside the house the moment the internet went out. I have no doubt they would have smashed their phones if there had been an alternative, however. After the signal was jammed, we could no longer send drones over there. Next, it seems we only have to wait. Fearing delays might bring changes, Daniel thought of going out to cut off Carter's water and electricity supply. His risky plan was stopped by me before it even started. Nothing is more important than our safety. In such apocalyptic times, we cannot afford to take any risks, because the cost is something we cannot bear. But it seems that luck is on our side this time. At noon, when it was hottest, the outdoor temperature reached a scorching 50 degrees Celsius, and then the water stopped. Daniel suspected that the outdoor water pipes burst from the heat. The entire villa complex was out of water. We also started using backup water, drawing water from the well. Without water, life on the second floor of the Carters' villa obviously became unbearable. Their house is a 2-story villa, and the second floor is the top floor, fearful of attracting zombies. They dared not turn on the air conditioning, and the 50-degree heat was driving them mad. Now without water, their troubles only intensified. By 3 p.m., I saw their younger son, Christopher, pass out from the heat. Then, slowly, their air conditioner outside units started up. They ultimately couldn't withstand the heat and turned on the air conditioning. But such noise gave direction to the zombies wandering aimlessly on the first floor. They started moving again, suddenly. A zombie climbed onto the air conditioning unit on the second floor and then spotted the Carter family inside. Bang! The sound of a gunshot echoed above the villa once more. However, the intense heat makes it easy to become dizzy, and Arthur's shot missed, allowing the zombie to grab her and bite off a chunk of her flesh. Next was the fainting Christopher, and then Charles. Ironically, the person who tackled Charles was the celebrity he had pushed out earlier. She bit a large chunk out of Charles's neck. Sister, nicely done. I couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. I was so focused on this celebrity that I overlooked another person in the house. By the time I realized, he had disappeared. Daniel, where's Carter? A scourge that lingers for 1,000 years. He better not have escaped. He's heading this way. Looks like he's coming to settle accounts with us. What? He's here. As Daniel finished speaking, our house's front door was pounded thunderously. Open up, open the door, people inside. Bang, that was the sound of a gunshot. Is he really trying to break down our door? He's overestimating himself. Who's in there? Why do you want to harm us? I saw that drone flying from your location. What do you gain from harming us? Countless zombies, attracted by Carter's noise, started moving in our direction. I could see that he was already bitten by zombies. Was he seeking revenge? Daniel smirked coldly and pressed a button. Instantly, the electric fence outside the door activated, and as Carter banged on the door violently again, his movements were frozen forever. My dear uncle, not everyone is entitled to know the answers, especially not you. Daniel wanted Carter to die with his eyes wide open, just like his own past life, and like his parents. Day 10 after the apocalypse. The power in the villa area was completely out, and the internet was down as well. With no living humans to attract them, aside from a few stray zombies, most had moved on to other activities. Daniel had me operate the drone to lure zombies to an uninhabited house, while he, fully armed, went out to retrieve their family's pistols. He also managed to remove Carter's remains from our doorstep. We had planned our route in advance and managed to retrieve the pistols without much danger. Carter and Arthur's calls were still an unresolved issue for us, without firearms like pistols. We always feared that someone might actually come over, and any carelessness could turn us into sitting ducks. As days passed, our greenhouse started to take shape. However, many of the fish in the pond died. The weather was too hot. We had moved the Rhode Island chickens into the house long ago to keep them cool with air conditioning. Fortunately, the hot weather had its benefits as the solar power was always plentiful. But the number of zombies in the villa area was increasing. Most people couldn't endure the high temperatures and were bitten by zombies when they tried to escape. Watching the quieter villa area, we knew we had to defend our little nest well. We recovered 3 pistols from Carter's house, with a total of 10 bullets left. Daniel explained to me how to use them and then stored the pistols safely. This is no joke. We must be careful with it. The post-apocalyptic days didn't affect us much. Every morning we would exercise by running for a while. Then work in the greenhouse. After lunch and a nap, we'd watch TV or engage in leisure activities. Evenings were our time for entertainment. Daniel and I would watch movies or variety shows together and enjoy the cool night air playing in the yard with Toyo and Jojo. Life was mundane, but we felt very happy. We had died in the first year of the apocalypse in our past lives, not knowing if humanity ever defeated the zombie virus, but we still held hope for our country. Daniel and I always said, if anyone could beat the virus, it would be us. Every day, Daniel would fiddle with his radio, looking for official news. Unfortunately, perhaps our area had completely fallen, so he never received any information. Just when we thought our days would continue like this without interruption, one morning, 2 SUVs drove into the villa area. It was day 30 after the apocalypse. They headed straight for Carter's house. But unfortunately, there was no one left there. These people were clearly the ones Carter and Arthur had called for backup, with large tattoos on their arms, just like Arthur. It was just unclear why they had arrived so late. Their weapons were far more advanced than Arthur's, and they killed quite a few zombies along the way. After entering Carter's house and finding no one, they carried out the supplies. Then, they saw our villa. You can easily see at first glance that it's very sturdy. Our windows are covered with blackout curtains, so they can't see inside clearly. When they tried to use a drone to scout, Daniel immediately activated the jammer. The helicopter rose up for a moment, then crashed into our yard. Perfect, they're delivering the equipment to us. From the monitor, I could see that the people outside were extremely frustrated. Then, they pulled out a dark, sinister-looking package. Daniel furrowed his brow. Violet, they're trying to blow up our door. Although our door is bomb-resistant. He didn't want to take any risks with these desperados. Who knows what they might try next? Daniel led me, along with Jojo and Toyo, to hide in the basement. We had just entered the basement when we heard a thunderous explosion outside. I covered Jojo and Toyo's mouths to make sure they didn't make a sound. Daniel quickly checked the surveillance to see what was happening outside. And sure enough, our door did not disappoint us. Being bomb-resistant, it really lived up to its name. Their explosives failed to blow the door open. Undeterred, they tried to continue. As they were setting up to blow the door a second time, Daniel secretly activated the electric grid on the door. The person trying to hang the explosives on the doorknob wasn't so lucky this time. The moment he touched the door, the high voltage instantly ended his life. Someone noticed something was wrong and tried to pull him away, only to end up taking 2 more down with him. This sudden turn of events made the group even more desperate. One of them drove a SUV over, trying to climb over it into the yard. He must have been foolish not to see the electric fence on our walls. He limply fell to the ground, and his companion who tried to help him got electrocuted as well. Finally, someone realized something was amiss. They arrived with 10 people and now 5 were gone, with more and more zombies surrounding them. They lost their initial bravado and didn't dare stay any longer, quickly driving away. We don't know if those people will come back, or if next time there will be more of them. So, Daniel and I decided to move things from upstairs to the basement afterward. Even if someone comes later, we won't be afraid. Upstairs, we made it look as if no one was living there. Daniel also adjusted the solar power system. The main switch was moved to the basement. If anyone came in, we would cut off the power upstairs, let them come and not enjoy the cool air. A villa without cool air is less comfortable than a cave. Let them stay a few more days. They probably won't care much. Fortunately, several months have passed, and those people have not returned. However, we still haven't let our guard down. Days went by, and we safely celebrated our first spring festival after the apocalypse. We also survived the anniversary of our grisly deaths in our past lives. By the next year, the weather had changed from extremely hot to extremely cold. The fish pond in the yard was unusable. Daniel made a simple version in the greenhouse. Our family also grew by 2 members, the offspring of Jojo and Toto, and in my belly, there was also our unexpected little surprise. Despite our precautions, it happened. Since it happened, I decided to keep it, after all. I had stockpiled countless amounts of baby formula, diapers, and various baby supplies, but Daniel was clearly panicking. He didn't know how to deliver a baby. He was also afraid that giving birth might harm my body. I told him not to worry. Is it possible that such a wise gentleman couldn't learn something as simple as midwifery? Fortunately, we had downloaded countless books and videos, among which were topics on childbirth and postnatal care. Our child was born during the coldest time of the second year. She was a delicate, fair little girl. We named her Lucky. We hoped that our future and our country would eventually find peace. With a child, our lives seemed to have become more interesting. In the third year after the apocalypse, we had a son. Daniel suggested, let's call him Hope. Our son took my surname, and his name meant hope, peace. The weather had now returned to normal. Gone were the extremes of heat and cold, Daniel always said. That terrible virus might just be passing. He still liked to tinker with his radio. I said, what's the use of fiddling with that thing? It only ever made static noises. It would be more meaningful to spend that time playing with the children. Daniel laughed. Violet, messing with this radio is actually what's truly meaningful. Because we have children, we've seen the world outside, but they've never left this little villa. If the terrible virus is over, I want to be the first to take the children out to see the world outside, to breathe the fresh air. All right, Daniel was right. From then on, I no longer bothered about Daniel messing with the radio. I would even join in with the kids. On the 6th year after the apocalypse, on Hope's birthday, Lucky casually turned on the radio left on the table. After the usual static, a different voice came through. It was a standard broadcast tone, and it was our Hope. Attention everyone. The global zombie epidemic has completely ended, and as of today, the number of new zombie cases worldwide has dropped to 0. All risk areas are fully unblocked. Soon, we will orderly restore network, electricity, and water services. Armed forces will be sent to clear zombies from the streets of cities and villages. Residents who receive this message, please patiently wait at home. To those who have worked so hard during this time, we salute you. You've been through a lot these 6 years. Yes, everyone had a hard time. Fortunately, the end is good. My children can finally stand freely and breathe on those clean, virus-free streets.